Welcome to a California Surf Museum podcast. Founded in 1986, the museum has been in operation for over 3 decades. With a permanent collection that chronicles the history of surfboards and wave riding, the California Surf Museum is a great experience for everyone who drops in. Visit us at surfmuseum.org for more information.
Hello, welcome to California Surf Museum. Today we're going to do a podcast about one of our really exciting new exhibits, surfboard craftsmanship, artistry and wood. And tell you a little bit about the exhibit, I have the curator of the exhibit, Rick Wilson.
Thank you, Jim. So the way this exhibit came about is that we realized we had some beautiful wooden boards in our collection here. Some that we own, some have been loaned to us, but we never really had a way to display them because they didn't seem to fit in with any other exhibit. So finally we decided, well, maybe we have enough boards that we can make an exhibit just of those kinds of boards. And so I'd like to kind of briefly take you through those boards and then introduce 2 of the creators of a couple of these boards. The first board is a board called Encinitas 1 by a man named Francis Todd II, and he's was a wood craftsman known for making surfboards and other wood objects out of kind of found recycled wood. So this board is a beautiful redwood and balsa board, swallowtail board that was donated to us a few years ago that's part of our collection. Just going through the other boards, this next board is noteworthy. Well, they're all noteworthy, but this one, because it was shaped by Pete Peterson, who was one of the original watermen, surfers, watermen in Southern California in the 30s and 40s and on up to 60s and 70s. And this board was made by Pete for his nephew, Matt Kivlin, who was one of the best surfers in Southern California in the kind of late 40s, early 50s time frame. And it is a Alaya, hot curl, kind of a combination. It's got a very advanced streamlined shape for the day, which was the late 40s. And it has a V bottom, no fin. The next board is one of 2 we got on loan from Gary Linden, made out of agave cactus. So this is a copy or a recreation of a Simmons spoon made out of agave. We also, from Gary, have a big wave gun, a copy of a Dick Brewer, Buzzy Trent big wave gun made out of agave. Both boards just absolutely beautiful with redwood fins and agave. This next board is made by Phil Edwards, generally considered to be the best surfer in the world in the early 60s. A balsa redwood board, a balsa board with 7 redwood stringers. And then the same kind of combination of woods in the fin on that board. We were lucky enough to get that board when we got some boards from the collection of a surfer named Harrison Ely. So, we really have a abundance of riches here in the museum because so many people are good to us and donate or loan boards to us. This next board was made by Donald Takayama, again a very famous surfer shaper. Who was here in Oceanside for many years, and so his widow donated this board to it. It's kind of a unique combination of a twin fin Simmons influence and an Hawaiian influence. Again, redwood balsa. The next board here, Carl Ekstrom, the creator, sitting in front of it, is a redwood board, asymmetrical, which Carl got a patent on asymmetrical boards in the 60s. And this board Carl will talk more about it, but was actually made from a wine cask. And So there's a whole story about that and the aroma they got from them while they were making the board. This next board is made by a surfer shaper named Al Nelson that maybe isn't as well known as some of the other makers of these boards, but he was one of the original Wind and Sea crew way back when, one of the first guys, first crew or a couple of crews to ride Waimea. If you go to the First Surfer magazine, there's 2 shots in there of Al Nelson riding Waimea. And he's still around, still makes surfboards. This board is, again, balsa, but it's a balsa skin over a foam blank. So he calls this a sandwich board, although it's a different kind of sandwich board than Simmons was talking about back in the 50s. The last board that I wanted to mention is another beautiful redwood board made by Bill Hamilton, the father of Laird Hamilton. And this board, again, is made out of redwood, old growth redwood, literally a couple 1,000-year-old redwood tree that fell down, and Bill and several other people were lucky enough to get pieces of this tree, and so they were able to make surfboards and other objects out of it. But this board is a copy of a tow-in board that Bill's son Laird rode at Chopu in 2000 called the Millennium Wave. And in the background, we've got the Surfer magazine cover that shows Laird riding that wave. And so again, this is a reproduction of that tow-in board, only made out of old growth redwood. So those are the boards in the exhibit, and I think we're now going to turn it over to Carl and Gary to talk more about, their boards in particular and how they made them.
Today we also have 2 of those distinguished shapers from San Diego and maybe from the entire planet here with us. Both of them made at least one of the boards that is in this exhibit. And so I'd like to introduce Gary Linden, right, and Carl Ekstrom, 2 really distinguished shapers. I wonder if you guys could just, maybe Gary, just talk a little bit about your background, so I don't have to do that for you, but tell us about when you started shaping and, a little bit about your career and how you got to the stage that this board is being made.
Well, I started shaping in 1967, but I'd been patching boards since I started surfing in 1962, so I had a familiarity with, working on surfboards. But in 1967 was really the shortboard revolution started, and I was fortunate enough to be in the Wind and Sea Surf Club at the time, and one of my mentors, Skip Fry, had gone to Australia and got his hands on a Bob McTavish Plastic Fantastic machine V-bottom, and he brought it back, and he let all of us in the club try it, and we were riding 9-10-foot boards and stuff, and then all of a sudden you got this 8-foot board, and the first time I stood up, I put my foot off the tail, and it just rode different, and I wanted one. So Skip made a board for Marty Fitch, and I got a hold of that, and I took it, and Bear Miranda sold me a blank, because you couldn't buy blanks in those days. You had to be a manufacturer to get one, and I made this board. It was what it was, but traded it for a brand new Barry Kanayapuni 3-stringer, sold that, bought some blanks, and then everybody wanted boards because the manufacturers weren't up with the new models. They still had inventory of all these long boards. They weren't going to make any 8-foot boards till they sold all their 9 and 10-foot boards. So I had an instant market, and I've always just shaped so that I could surf better, surf how I wanted to surf, or what I need. Now I'm 70. I shape boards that facilitate my shortboard surfing at 70. So that's why I do it.
Fantastic. And Carl, why don't you just tell us a little bit? I mean, for both you guys, I think I first met you about 40 years ago. So we go back a long way. But why don't you just tell us a little bit about from the beginning with your shaping and La Jolla and that whole development.
I was born right up the street from Wind and Sea in 1941. And my brothers were both surfers at Wind and Sea. And so I started surfing at Wind and Sea when I was 11 years old. And from there, I got really interested in we had no money. So we had to just kind of try to, I started working on boards, probably when I was about 14, and the boards we were riding were just terrible. I mean, back then it was just cut down planks or whatever. And so Pat Kern turned me on to my first glass job. I reshaped one of these balsa boards, and then Kern turned me on to my first fiberglass job. And then it kind of went from there. And then later on, I got in with Al Nelson, who did this board over here. And and we became partners. It was Nelson Ekstrom, and he did a lot of shaping for Jacobs and Bing and a lot of different people. And so we worked together for a few years, and then Al got into airplanes. And he built and designed the Dragonfly with Bob Walters at one of the Oshkosh show. So he beat out Burt Rutan on aircraft design on an airplane. And then the guy he trained went to work for Rutan and was responsible for doing the Voyager that traveled around the world on a single tank of gas. But it all came from Nelson. These guys. Are just really good with these materials and just had real minds for, design. And they're a great group of people to be around. And Pat Kern is another one that I learned a lot from, So I just, as a kid, I was kind of really amazed by all these kids. Bob Simmons was hanging out a lot. So I learned just a lot from just being around. And then I like I say, I surfed wind and sea for many, many years, and that was kind of my favorite spot. So.
Well, speaking of Pat Kren that you just mentioned, Gary, you've shaped a board over here, this gun. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the big gun action and how you got involved with big wave surfing and the whole WSL big wave tour? Give us a little bit of a history on that, and then tell us about this board.
Well, I always tell people that riding big waves is more, for me, philosophy than actual size of the waves. I always sat outside and tried to get the biggest wave that came in that day. If it was 2 foot and there was an occasional 4 foot wave, I was sitting out the back waiting for that good one, and that just kept getting escalated to bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's just. I'm real careful about everything I do in life. The risk has to equal the reward, and riding big waves is just such a fantastic reward that I don't care if I get hurt, And so I just loved it, And as I got older, I had more opportunity to, surf Hawaii and, ride Waimea. I started surfing Todos Santos Island off of Ensenada. And I was able to catch a lot of big waves with relatively few people around. So I started getting pretty good at it. And, so there was a few locals and we were going, God, wouldn't it be fun to have a contest, And I was just talking earlier, I started surfing at 12. I started running contests at 15. I started shaping at 17. And that's what I've done all my life, not much else. So, of course, I'm thinking of contests, and we all, we could each put up $100, and there's 10 of us, and then whoever won would get $1,000, So it kind of morphed into this idea of how are we going to do a surf contest, and I was president of the ASP at the time, and so we organized a contest. We were going to do a championship, a CT event with women at Todos Santos. 60 surfers, and I was just crazy. We didn't have forecasting. We didn't have anything. It's like, and then they decided at the last week not to do it. So I had everything in place, and the International Surfing Association, the ISA, with Fernando Aguirre from Reef, said, okay, let's do that contest, Gary. So the Reef at Todos came into being, and that was we lucked out. We had like 50-foot waves. Taylor Knox caught a 53-foot wave in the semifinals, and it just went all the way around the world. So from there, I worked on Red Bull Big Wave Africa for about 8 years, and also on the Mavericks event, just trying to, and I had this tour developed in my mind. I had it on paper. I had I had it in Portuguese. I had it in English. I had all how it would go, and I was just shopping around trying to find somebody who would believe in it, and realize that without proof of concept, selling an idea is ridiculously hard, especially in the surf community. And so I was down in Cape Town, and the movie Breaking Down the Door came out about the start of pro surfing and the IPS. And I was involved in that. I was a judge for IPS. And then I saw the movie, and I thought, this light bulb went on. I'm just going to link all the big wave events that are happening, do a rating sync, have a world tour champion, and then I got proof of concept. Right? And that's what I did. So we started a couple contests, and I would go to the contest and go, I'll bring you the formats for 24 surfers. I'll bring you the best big wave riders in the world to compete against 18 of you locals, and then we'll do a rating thing, and it'll grow. And it took off. I did it for 5 years, and then the WSL, or what became the WSL, took over my tour and gave me a job for about 5 years, and we did that. So I know that's pretty long-winded. I didn't get to the board, but when I was growing up, and I wanted to be a big wave rider, because all we'd see, we'd go to the movies, these surf movies, and in between flipping bottle caps and yelling and raising hell and stuff, there'd be a big wave come on, and be Greg Knoll or Buzzy Trent. And man, Buzzy Trent was my idol, dude. I just wanted to be Buzzy Trent. That guy was so crazy. He would you read stories about him falling off a construction site and catching himself like Spider-Man or something. I thought, that guy's the coolest. And so his boards were always the ones I really wanted. And, Dick Brewer was probably my biggest mentor in my shaping career. I really think he's a man that changed modern surfing. I think we're all riding something that spawned off his design. And I made Brewer surfboards, and we worked together for a while. And I told him, I wanted a Buzzy Trent model, and so we glued up a blank, and he shaped it, and I made the fin, and it's just, it's beautiful. I have it. It's one of my favorite things, and I love to work with agave, and so I wanted to make a replica. And I made this Simmons here, and I made a Duke board too out of redwood. And what happens for me, and why I like to do the replicas, is it feels like you're channeling the person that made the original, and you get really close to that time and place, and the tools that were used, and the waves you were going to ride with them, and you look at these different shapes that are very much different than what is in your mind right now, because you're trying to go forward and do all this stuff. But then you see I see how those rails work. Yeah, that bottom contour. I feel the rocker, and it just gives me a connection that I don't think I would have without actually trying to replicate something. And if you replicate the master, I'm not going to be the master. I got my own things that I'm pretty good at, but just being in tune on that different level is kind of my way of expanding my creativity.
Fantastic. So, Carl, tell us a little bit about the whole idea of the asymmetrical. You were in La Jolla, you were surfing Linden Sea, and then you came up with this idea. And tell us about your shop that you had then too, and all of that. So tell us a little bit about the asymmetrical and your concept.
Back in the '60s, I got a lot from Pat Kren and Al Nelson, all these guys. They're older than I was, and I kind of grew up in the sport. And for me, I always liked riding Wind and Sea, and I was a regular foot forward. And I noticed that in Windansea, you could run out of wave really fast. And, you know, the fish came in with the twin fin and all that kind of stuff, which was a great design. But for me, I liked the down the line on going right, because I was a left foot forward, but I didn't like the backside turn because the board had a tendency to track. And so what I did is I moved the fins up, fins up on the backside, and shortened the rail line, put more curve, more tail kick, and it made the backside turn just be naturally come around a lot freer. You know, they wouldn't stick, it wouldn't track on my backside because you wanted to get back into the wave again. And so that's basically where it came from, and it worked. I always rode them because I knew they were working for me. And of course, there's a problem. You know, you get your right foot and your left foot and all that kind of stuff, and people have a hard time with that. And the boards are a lot more personalized. And and of course, you know, symmetrical boards are great. I mean, I was never against them, and I built a lot of symmetrical boards, but I also built a lot of asymmetrical boards if people wanted them. You know, I wasn't pushing them on anybody.
Who were some of the most well-known guys that took your design and experimented with it?
Well, you know, I grew up with Butch Van Arsdalen, and you know, he did a little bit with it. And I got him in the water for the first time. We went to La Jolla High School, and we hooked up there. But we just, I don't know, we had a lot of the local guys picked up on it, the kids from the shores and stuff like that. So they seemed to like it. I worked with Dickie Moon quite a bit, and you know, had a lot of, you know, we had really a lot of great surfers in the area. So you know, it just it was a good experience. I enjoyed it.
Gary, you were working with agave, and you started with it, but tell us a little bit about how you came to be with agave, and tell us a little bit about your relationship with some of the most famous agave users, such as Cuervo, and the relationship you have there, and tell us that story.
Well, I had a team rider, Ryan Bracker from La Jolla, and his dad was a doctor, and he was helping one of the elderly surfers from Point Loma area. And, you know, a lot of us surfers, we get to our later years, we didn't put any money away, so he was kind of doing it pro bono. And the guy gave Dr. Bracker a miniature redwood agave surfboard replica from the 1936 of the boards that they were making. And apparently the story goes that all the balsa would come into the port in LA, and the San Diego shapers couldn't get any balsa wood, or they wouldn't get enough. So there was some agave stocks down there, and I guess it was light, and I guess they figured out, well, let's give it a try. And so Dr. Bracker thought, wow, this is great stuff. And he lived in La Jolla, and there's a lot of agave right there in La Jolla area. And he was a woodworker, so he set up this little thing and started making a couple blanks, and he was just putting them together like a jigsaw puzzle pieces and everything. And Ryan brought him up to me because he, you know, Dad, we gotta get Gary to help us because he knows how to make blanks and stuff. And you know, I've been shaping balsa wood forever, and so they brought it up to me, and I just like the first couple ones. It's just because it's really the shell is just so hard, you know. And then inside it's all soft and porous, all these different textures, and there's spikes that cut you, and it was a nightmare. And I thought, I'm never going to do this again, you know. And then my curiosity got the best of me because when you open it all up, you start seeing all these colors, and it's like nothing you've ever worked on before. And I always like a challenge. You know, if you give me a challenge, it's like, you put some money on it because I'm going to win. I'm not giving up till I get this thing done. So figured out how to do it, and we started making them, and I just really loved it. And you know, the doctor was making the blanks, and I was, doing the shapes and stuff. But I wanted to do the blanks myself too, because there's a creativity in making the blanks of how where you put the colors and how you glue it up and all that stuff. So I started doing my own, and Randy Hild from the Roxy days, an old friend of mine, called me and said, "Hey, Gary, you still making agave boards?" I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I've got this advertising agency now. We just got Cuervo as a customer, and they're losing a little bit of the market because like Cuervo Gold wasn't 100% agave, it was 51%. But they had their original recipe was Tradicional, which was 100% agave. And I guess Patron had just educated everybody on the snobbishness of having 100% agave, blue agave. And I said, "Well, you know what, Randy, I just have this idea, and I've had it for a long time. I want to make 100% agave surfboard." And he goes, "Great." And so because the agave plant is just so fantastic. I mean, the leaves that made the what they called sisal, which was a rope that the ships used to sail around the world with, and the juice from the leaves is really, really. There's a lot of potential in it has a lot of cellulose, so that's where all the strength is. And I thought, well, that would be the resin. And the fibers I could use as cloth. And so I shaped a blank, and we took it down to Tequila, Mexico, where the Cuervo factory is. And we were going to do a 3-day photo shoot, and I had to figure out how I was going to do that, make 100% agave board. So when they steam the pulp, or steam the heart, which is they extract the juice, and that's what's fermented into tequila, there's all this pulp, and they make a little bit of paper out of it. So they're making paper. I go, okay, well, I'll use that to seal the core, which is the stalks. And then I had to figure out how to bond that. And I used the juice from the leaves to bond it. And then I took the fin was really hard. I had to take 2 of the outer shell pieces, and they weren't wide enough to get any shape. So I kind of had to put them together and do that. And I got it all together, and I didn't know that it wasn't going to be waterproof. So I got it up here, and I go, okay, well, we're gonna film you surfing this. And I'm going, oh, okay. So we'll go out back of the factory. I'm thinking, well, it's going to be like 2 to 3 feet or something, and I'm going to be able to paddle out at least and catch a wave. It was 6-foot south swell pumping, closeouts. And as I'm paddling out, the thing starts dissolving, and it's getting slippery like a bar of soap as it dissolves. And I actually turned around after the fin fell out, caught a soup, stood up and rode it in. And then I brought it in. We found the fin. I took all the agave paper off, and I redid it, and I've got it in the factory there. I redid it with the juice and paper, and it's got a real tight lamination. It's just I'm waiting to develop some agave resin, and I just haven't have the money. And Cuervo, they got what they wanted out of it, and so that hasn't advanced. But the fibers from the leaves, you can do a fiberglass test is you take a strand and you pull it apart like that, and then 4-ounce, pretty easy to pull apart, but they have 4-ounce S, and it's a little stronger, and the agave fiber is between regular 4-ounce and 4-ounce S, so I know it's a good substitute. I'm working right now with a fellow in Kenya that is on a big farm that produces sisal. And he tells me he's got 1 million stalks, and he's made a couple blanks, and we're working on a project to get some fiber made from agave and some resin made from agave, and make an alternative, ecologically sound surfboard. But hopefully I live long enough to do it. It's a work in progress.
Love it. Well, speaking of design, I'm just going to come over here with Carl because I see you brought this
Models, yeah.
model. Can you just give us a little bit
This
of-
one is a Pat Kern model. That one there.
I'm going to give you both these
Yeah.
since you're going to want to talk about both of
Yeah.
them. First about
And
that.
this one is, this is Kern. You know, you think he's just a surfboard guy, you know, shaper and all that stuff. He designed and made this, you know, pedestal for this. I mean, he's unbelievably good with wood. And the model is made out of jalutong. It's a type of wood, and it's kind of done in two halves and then put together. And, you know, he just does absolutely beautiful work. And this is, in fact, Gary has one of these and one of these boards also, you know. But I just wanted to show what, you know, how skilled this guy was and how he had a huge influence on all of us. And of course, he was big wave rider. He held a, you know, record for a while, and just an amazing guy. And he's here right now, you know. So, and I've been working with him. We did about, let's see, I've done like 9 guns with him. You know, I glassed them. He shaped them, I glassed them. But it was a funny thing. We were talking about Pat was heavily into symmetry. And so he calls me up and he said, you know, I was making asymmetricals before you were because they're all balsa wood. And they weren't ever quite symmetrical, you know, thick and thin and all that kind of stuff.
Whether you want to or not.
So yeah, he knew that I had that patent on it and all that stuff. This was just about probably 5 years ago or something like that. And then he calls up, and then he's so much into symmetry. You know, if anything's a quarter of an inch off, he's going to cut it in half and get rid of it. You know, if it's already glassed, he doesn't want anybody to see it. If it's not absolutely perfect. So he calls me up and he says, what was your real reason for making asymmetricals? And I knew what he wanted to hear. I said, well, they're easier to make. And he said, I knew it. You know, he wouldn't let me say one more thing. That's all he wanted to hear, you know, because, you know, so I've been working with Pat for a long time. And so I wanted to bring this down and show you what, you know, yeah.
Now you've also got one of your own models here.
What I do is I work in scale models, because with scale models, I can change them, you know, and put move the fins around on them, you know.
Come over here. I want you to take a look at
fins. You know, you can remove them, change the fins out, and all that kind of stuff. And with scales, you know, you're not blowing a blank every time you know, on the full scales.
Right.
If something's not right, you know, you're just blowing a blank, you know. And then these, I can just get them with Bondo. I can do whatever and just make them however I want them to be. And I can put them aside, and then I come back to see if I still like them or not. And then new ideas come out of these for the next ones. And so that's kind of the way I work. And then I have something to display and all. And then they can take these quarter scales, they can blow these up to full size and cut them on the machine. And that's what was happening with these guys at Rough House. I mean, they just do beautiful work. So that's kind of the way I work. And it's
You have another one there?
I have, this would be a little more contemporary. This board would be what I'm doing now. We're working on doing a rail bite that goes all the way up, and so the rail has a lot more hold, and then lifting this rail as it goes back so that when it gets on a rail, it wants to go up the face. So and then we'll try to do is split the water off so that we're just wetting this much of the board, you know, for reduced drag. And so that's what I've been working on recently, you know, doing things. And then there again, I just have the fins. I can, you know, move them around.
Fins like a fish head.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're just we're doing it for, you know, drag, reduced drag. You know, we're looking for reduced drag all the time. And this could be a channel, it could be whatever, to split the water off. And then, I get into extreme things like this one here would be, this board is just the twist, a radical amount of twist. And it's just, what it is a board that can be ridden this way, and then it comes around, it's the same board again. If you're going one direction, And so it's just, you do it to see, if there's something to be learned from it. These guys, these new riders can ride anything. Right. So we got all these test guys out there that just you can really get great feedback. And so it's fun to do. It's just, and then another one, George Orbelian came to me years ago, and he wanted to do this thing here, where he had a spline going down the center, this thing here, where you move this up the board like this to make the tail as flexible as you want to make it. And this could be done on both sides, so you could do, change the flex on both sides. Just, you're looking for the optimum. And, with this, we got the adjustability, which is fun to work with, And so I haven't done it full scale yet, but that came from George Orbelian, came up with the idea. And then I said, well, how would I do that? And then I did a lot of work with Bufo, Ruben Brouwers, they came over from Germany. And he had a deal where he could put air into the foam. They perforate the fiberglass into the foam, polystyrene, bead foam, and then they can actually, after it's glass, they perforate the glass in so that they can put a lot of air pressure inside the blank without delaminating the blank. And then they put a valve in, and they could pressurize the blank, and the boards were, and then you could adjust the flexibility in the board. There was a lot learned from that. And you'd think, they could go up to 12 pounds pressure or even more inside the blank, and the air is going around the foam and into the foam and throughout the whole board. And you could adjust the flexibility and find out where the optimum flex was. And he really came up with a great system for doing that. And he's back in Germany now, but so I worked with him quite a bit. But there are a lot of really, we work with a lot of really interesting people that have, a lot of interesting ideas about what could work. Yeah. And it's just fun seeing what does work. Sometimes we're surprised. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I'm pretty surprised. I don't know about the rest of you that have been watching the show, but I learned more than I ever thought I possibly could. And I've known these guys for 40 years, and I learned a lot today, and it was pretty amazing. Do you guys have any other things?
Well, I learned a lot too. What he's doing.
Yeah, I'm amazed by the work that Carl does. I have the patience for it, but I don't apply it in that direction. So it's nice to see somebody really let their mind expand. And I just want to say one thing about Pat Kren is when you look at the boards and you put, like, I know what it takes to ride a big wave, and I can tell which shapers don't ride big waves by just feeling the rails, pretty much. And you pick up an old Pat Kren, and he was out there waiting for one of the bombs. You just know it, and he was going to be able to catch it and make it. And that's what I really love about him, because he doesn't talk too much, and just says it with his work, and he's just like cutting the board in half when there's not. Something I would never do. I would never waste a board, but he's just such a perfectionist. He can't let it go out.
We had to just get the saw out of his hand. Really. It's like a finished board, And Clark had sent down a couple pieces of foam, and one of the pieces was an 1/8 of an inch narrower than the other one. And when he put the redwood stringers in there, the stringers came out a little bit like this. Get the saw. He had to stop him. You know, I mean, the board was finished. He discovered it because he saw, oh, the stringers are coming out wrong. You know, for me, I mean, it's fine. You know, for the asymmetry, but it's really class. And these guys are all artists. And
well, that's our both of you.
yeah, well, thank you. But it's interesting where things can go.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you all will come and visit this exquisite exhibit. The California Surf Museum is open again. We're open 7 days a week, opening at 10 o'clock from 10 to 4. Please come down and see us in this beautiful, beautiful exhibit. And I want to thank both of our guests today. Gary, can't say enough about all the work that you've done, and Carl, both of you have kind of, in your own ways, revolutionized shaping. I want to thank Rick Wilson, who conceived this whole thing and put it together. And I hope you all come down and visit and see it for real. You can actually touch the boards and see all the rest of the great exhibits we have here at the California Surf Museum. So until next time, I'm Jim Kempton of the California Surf Museum. Thanks very much.
Hey.